We are live. We are live. Welcome to College Football's Peek Around the Corner with your host, Greg Pflugar. We cover everything in college football because we love everything in college football. And if you do as well, please subscribe to our ever-growing channel. Smash the like button if you like our content. Share the video with your family and friends, with your psychiatrist, with your priest, with your neighbor, with your significant other. Please share the video. Spread the word across all your social media platforms. Welcome into the house, into the studio that sits on the corner of Keith Jackson Parkway and Kurt Gowdy Avenue. Welcome on in. Do not be afraid. Do not be afraid to be a PATC legend. With your comments, with your phone calls, welcome in. Holy smokes. Cloak and Dagger? Read the rules. I want to thank everybody coming on in early in the show. Kirk Bender, Bo Stacker, Ryan Brooks, R. Webb, holy smokes. Richard L., Mr. Monkey Says Coy, A. Mac, Conundrum, Brandon Gerald, McKinley, Gene Calderon, John Teal's in the house, KWUKSU, Christopher Shannon, Lewis, Carlos, Diaz is in the house, Jason Isaac, Matt Schnunk, Moff Prof, Jeff Olson. The Evil Badger is in the house, Buckshot Kid. Gerald Jones, Mr. Buckeyes in the house, Jesse Wilson's in the house, Ted Evans, good afternoon, Greg. Montlake Boulevard, Washington, Gold Dogs. Thank you, Ted Evans. Thanks so much for the super chat, for your generosity to the program. I appreciate it so very much. Caden's dad is in the house. He's got his head on a swivel. Obsidian's in the house, 75. Yes. Greg, post pics of PATC peeps wearing merchandise while traveling would be fun. Thanks for the reminder, Brandon. Before we go on, we're going to start doing, if you buy merchandise, the trucker's hat, the head on a swivel t-shirt, the hoodie, or the mug, any of the merchandise that's in the merchandise store, in the link in the description, go to it right now. Buy some merchandise for your loved ones. If you buy something, take a picture. Take a picture in a great location, on your travels, on vacation, at home, with a mug in your hand, with a t-shirt. Take a picture. Send it to me on the DM, my direct message on my Twitter account, @FlugEmpire. You see it on the ticker on the bottom of the screen. Give me a little story to that picture. Could be funny, could be whatever it is. And then I will show your picture right here as part of the show with the merchandise. We introduce you to the PATC community with the PATC merchandise. Something fun we're going to start doing. Thank you, Brandon, for that reminder, and I appreciate the idea. Thank you so very much, Brandon. So, does everybody understand? Does everybody understand? Yes, Brandon just became a PATC legend. Okay, so we're going to start doing that. Now, look, I got to say this. Here we are, Sunday afternoon. We're all just comfortable. College football's coming up. We've already selected 3-0 week 0 games against the spread. Peek around the corner. We're waiting on the Florida State. What are they going to do on Tuesday? Are they going to withdraw from the ACC conference? Brandon Marcello just put out a tweet, 247 Sports, saying, are they going to do it? Are they going to risk it? Are they going to alienate themselves to the ACC members? Are they going to alienate themselves to ESPN? Do they have a landing spot? Look, a lot of people, including us, we're just guessing. We know that the smoke was real. We know that the fire was real. We could never confirm that if they're going to do it or not. Nobody really knows except for the people, the decision makers at Florida State. And do they even know? I hope they would know that they've made a decision if they're going to send in that withdrawal notice or not. On or before August 15th. That's the day that you must withdraw from the conference if you are planning to leave the conference by July 1st, 2024 to play in a different conference in September of 2024. It carries a lot of risks. We've talked about it here at Peek Around the Corner. December 26, 2022, our Money Perch told us on December 4th or 5th, December 12th, December 19th, December 26th, we finally had to go with it. He told us a couple things. One was that Florida State was going to make some noise in public a couple months from now, and sure enough they did. 2 months later, they made noise on February 24th when Mike Alford came and talked out in public saying that the ACC had to do something drastic with regards to revenue. There's a huge gap and they couldn't go on like this much longer, Florida State. He also believed the Florida State Money Perch, he told us that Florida State was gearing up to pull the trigger to challenge the grant of rights in the first quarter of 2024. First quarter of 2024. But I got to tell you, in the last month or so, we have been taking it very seriously at Peek Around the Corner. The threat of Florida State pulling the trigger. This was before Florida State had that where Peter Collins, the Board of Trustees, had that interview with Warchant, a brilliant interview done by warchant.com. And then Peter Collins, the Board of Trustees, and the whole rest of the board, they were united. What was it, 12 days ago, 13 days ago? They had that Board of Trustees meeting. It was August 2nd, 11 days ago. Man, oh man, were they firing shots. All of them saying, something has to be done. We are prepared to do whatever we can to make sure that Florida State can compete at the highest level in athletics. The president, McCullough, he said, unless there's radical change, unless we get radical change from the ACC, we're pulling the trigger. Basically, that's what he's saying. They also said they need a 12-month exit plan. So which is it going to be? Are they going to send the withdrawal notice in on or before August 15th? So tomorrow or Tuesday. Those are your 2 days remaining, Florida State. Now, let me say this, and then we're going to get to the Trev Alberts interview with Journal Star here in a second. I wouldn't blame, look, we believe the grant of rights, it would be a hard battle. It's going to take time, going to take a lot of money. It's risky. We also understand a peek around the corner, it is incredibly risky to do nothing at all. For Florida State to take 13 more years of cuts, of paper cuts, 1,000 paper cuts, you will also bleed to death. That is risky. We get it. We get the motivation. We just don't know the how. What is Florida State's angle to this? Is it to write a massive check? Is it to have a private equity firm like JP Morgan Chase or a different equity firm invest in your athletic department? Say, okay, all right, we'll upfront you the money. Get out of the ACC. Be one of the top brands in the country. And you know what? JP Morgan Chase will get every little piece of every transaction that is done for the next 30, 40 years at the Florida State Athletic Department. Every time you buy a t-shirt, every time you buy a ticket, every time you buy something where they're being sponsored in the stadium, every time you buy a hot dog, a Coke, and a beer, guess who gets a little bit of that money? And then some. Florida State, are they willing to bet on themselves to get out of the ACC? And the question is, would the ACC even accept the massive check that Florida State would be willing to give them? We don't believe they're obligated to take the check. Unless they say no, ACC says no, and then Florida State says, you have to take this check. We're taking you to court. Now, I do not blame Florida State if they do not pull the trigger before or on August 15th. I don't blame them for a second. However, let's be honest, and I think even the Seminole fans would be honest in this regard. If they do not pull the trigger, tomorrow or on Tuesday, then the next time Florida State talks about what the ACC needs to do for them, or Florida State really needs to get out of the ACC, it can't be with words, it has to be with action. Brinkmanship, you can only do it one time. You can only play this leverage game one time. I'm not sure Florida State got anything out of it. If they don't pull the trigger, what did they get out of this last so many months of pounding the table? Maybe they got something that we don't know about. Maybe that unequal revenue sharing plan, that is not what Florida State wanted. They're not going to get this redistribution of television revenue based upon ratings. Florida State's not going to get that. So, again, if they don't pull the trigger by on or before August 15th, well, that's I don't blame them. But next summer, next spring, after January 1st, the first quarter of 2024, the words are not needed. The words won't be useful. Going out in public and talking about this once again, it's not going to land the same way that it did when you talked about it in February, March, and here in July and August. It's not going to land the same way. You're not going to move the needle. You're not going to move people. You're not going to influence anybody, Florida State. Next summer, next spring, it's either you do it or you don't, but you can leave the words at home because they're not going to land the same way. So, again, in this show, put down your comments. Call us up. Tell us what you think is going to happen in the next 48 hours. Or is anything going to happen? It's not even 48 hours. It's more than 48 hours. The next 60 hours. Okay? What is Florida State going to do? Now, let's get to Trev Alberts here. All right. Here we go. I got to say, most of what Trev Alberts said in this interview, we're not going to go through the whole thing. We're going to skip some parts to it. We do provide a link. You can read the whole article. A lot of this is not surprising to us here at Peek Around the Corner. I'm going to say this with a wink and a wink and a nod. Loose lips sink ships. How about that? Let's start there. There are reasons why PATC, why we have been talking for over a year, why we never walked off the beam that Oregon and Washington would become Big Ten members 5 months from now or 5 years from now. We said that over and over and over and over and over again. And people say, well, Greg, how were you so sure? Well, loose lips sink ships. And I'm just gonna end that part right there. Trev Alberts loves to talk in public. And he probably doesn't stop talking when he's not in public. You guys understand what I'm saying? So let's get to what he said. There's a part of this interview. Here's another thing about Trev Alberts. He's honest. He talks too much and he's honest. But he said way too much. And there's one part of this that I think should be a concern for many. And before I get into this article, I want to make sure when we talk about Power 2, the Power 2 conferences, or Power 2, the Power 2, people are using it in different ways. Some people, when they say future Power 2, the Power 2 conference, they're speaking of SEC and the Big Ten continuing to be more powerful than the other conferences, making more money, being able to shape the future of college football, college athletics more than anybody else. That's how I mean it when I talk about Power 2. The two most powerful conferences. Some people, when they talk about Power 2, they're saying Power 2 and nobody else has access to the highest level competition in college football and college sports, but mainly college football. Power 2 and everybody else is cut off from that elite access of competition. And then there's some people who slide back and forth depending on what day it is. I got to tell you right now, here at Peek Around the Corner, we have been a strong believer in consolidation. We've been talking about it since episode 1. We talked about it all the way in March 31st, 2022, when we were trying to explain why USC called the Big Ten. And we had 3 months of people telling us that Big Ten was never going to expand with USC that is 1,000 miles away from Lincoln, Nebraska. And we were trying to explain to people consolidation. Our very first episode of this is our manifesto. Consolidation. It's happening. However, when we're talking about consolidation, we're talking about the media networks, the schools, but we're not talking about consolidation of access. So I'm going to go against the grain. And I'm okay with that. I'm going against Trev Alberts. I'm going against a lot of people who talk about the future of college football. I don't think it's going to go the way that Trev Alberts hinted here. And we're going to get to that point. Again, two powerful conferences, more than the others, yes. But two conferences that stop access for everybody else, I don't believe that's happening. I do not believe that's happening. Let's get in the next 10, 15 years. Let's get to the article, because a lot of people haven't read this. Amy Just, Trev Alberts on realignment, Inc.'s future plans, scheduled conflicts. 19 minutes into a 2-hour interview, Nebraska's athletic director Trev Alberts stated the obvious, I'm a little passionate about this. In this instance, this refers to conference realignment. The former Buckus Award winner has only held his position for 2 full academic years while at his alma mater. But in that time, there have been multiple seismic changes in the landscape of college athletics. Conference realignment is only the latest chapter in this new era, and Alberts has enough thoughts on the matter to fill a doctoral dissertation. Agree with them or not, he's been through this before, albeit at a different level, when he navigated Nebraska's Omaha transition from Division II to Division I in 2011, putting the Mavericks in the Summit League. History is unkind to conferences that have not had the courage to expand. Alberts told the Journal Star 4 days after Oregon and Washington joined the Big Ten. That I agree with. That I agree with. History is unkind to conferences that have not had the courage to expand. Alberts, I don't believe it's done. It's never been done. It's more likely than not that there will be continued periods of angst. I believe that the next go around, that my basic conclusion will be far more disruptive than anything we're currently engaged in. We need to prepare ourselves mentally for that. There's a lot to unpack there. We're going to take a little time to unpack what we just read. Number one, Trev Alberts talks a lot in public and in private. He's also very honest. Now, this is not even the PATC money shot of this article. We'll get to that in a second. I don't believe it's done. It's never been done. It's more likely than not there will be a continued periods of angst. I believe that the next go around, the next one, he didn't put a time frame on it. He didn't say in 6 years from now, 7 years. He just said the next go around will be far more disruptive than anything we've currently engaged in. And look what we've just been through. August 4th is considered one of the biggest events, days of college football in the landscape. August 4th, you had 4 schools going from one Power 5 conference to another. You had the implosion of a conference that's been around for 108 years. You had Oregon and Washington joining the Big Ten. 4 corner schools going to the Big 12. And we don't even have the total impact of all those moves yet, the ripple effects. And Trev Alberts is saying the next go around is going to be even far more disruptive than anything we've currently engaged in. And I think we all kind of know where this is going, right? The ACC, we just got done talking about Florida State. There's going to be more consolidation. It's going to be bigger, more impactful than what we just went through, which is crazy, but it's going to be. It's going to involve even more money, even more bigger population, even bigger fan bases out in the ACC. And then the last part of this, we need to prepare ourselves mentally for that. I think he's speaking not only to the fans, but he's speaking to the athletic directors within the Big Ten, the presidents. We've got to get our arms around this. We know we're going to get bigger. We know the SEC is going to get bigger. We know the Big 12 is probably going to get bigger. We know that there is this gold rush of 2026. The playoff format's going to change. We're going to have a couple $1 billion in the playoff money. That's going to help us pay for Olympic sports. We'll get into that in a second. Okay. But that's not even the money shot. We'll get to that in a second. A look back. Now, we skipped a few parts of this article. If you've noticed, if you've read the article, we're not going to go through the whole thing. You can. There's a link provided. You can read the whole article if you want. A look back. How did we get here? Simply put, TV dollars. A 1984 Supreme Court case, NCAA versus Board of Regents of the University of Oklahoma, helped pave the way for conferences and independent schools to negotiate these TV deals, but it took a few years for substantial change to take root. The cable bundle came along shortly thereafter, and so did an influx in cash. Things were fine for a while. What's now happening is the cable bundle is in trouble through cord cutting, Alberts said. So where we were able to bundle all this stuff and where you would have certain teams that were joining conferences based on the cable bundle, i.e. market, that's being disrupted. So that business model is falling apart. And now it's about streaming. So now the brand value of every individual institution is more important than ever before. It's not about the bundling of cable pack. It's not about the TV households. It's not about the market size, although that helps. It's about the brand. It's about the brand. The new Big Ten. We haven't gotten to the money shot of this article yet, so buckle up. The new Big Ten, Oregon and Washington jumped ship from the Pac-12 last week after the league had been grossly mismanaged for over a decade, per Pat Chun, Washington State's athletic director. When Oregon and Washington made their pitches to the Big Ten, and the collection of the league's athletic directors, presidents, and chancellors took their vote, Alberts supported accepting the two Pac-12 powers. Yes, he did. A lot of people did. We remember, we peek around the corner for over a year. We said Washington and Oregon, 5 months from now, 5 years from now, they have support within the Big Ten. It wasn't just about Kevin Ward. In fact, he needed to leave for this to ever happen. There was always support for adding Oregon and Washington, including Nebraska, because, you know, the Big Ten is going to have to go west again before they would have to go east again, and everybody in the conference wants to go east with that final expansion piece. And Alberts is saying, look, I supported it. I thought adding Oregon and Washington made sense, Alberts said. Obviously, we had a lot to work out in terms of scheduling, but I think the thing that was more palatable was the willingness of those schools to accept what their media value was for a 7-year period. And their history, investment in football, and success and strength of the brands, I think it makes a lot of sense. Oregon's value is their football brand. We called them the brand multiplier here at Peek Around the Corner for over a year. When other people were concerned about what wasn't perfect with Oregon, we talked about what Oregon brought to the Big Ten and to Fox Sports, and that was their big brand. And finally, people have woken up to this. Same with Washington. This is my own personal opinion, but I think the future has to contemplate football being taken out of the mix. This is the PATC money shot of this article. This is my own personal opinion, but I think the future has to contemplate football being taken out of the mix, Alberts says. We're moving to a 35 to 40 top brands being a part of something. We'll get to that. We'll get back to that in a second. If you just look at football in isolation, eventually conferences will matter less in a sense. If we can find a way to take football and have that be this entity here, I think then you can get back to doing some much more intelligent thinking around the rest of the sports, which should be regionally based. We're moving to a 35 to 40 top brands being a part of something. That is your PATC money shot. He's not talking about a power two the way I'm talking about it. Where yes, there's going to be two conferences. They're going to make a lot more money than the other conferences. Schools are going to be making more money, more exposure. They're going to be more like the Yankees and the Dodgers. The top teams of those top conferences are going to be the Yankees and Dodgers of our sport. With their media money, their big brand. But he's not talking about that. Trev Alberts is saying we're moving to a 35 to 40 top brands being a part of something. Being a part of something. Being a part of something. So I look, when this came out, did I get a few phone calls? Yes. Did I get a couple of text messages? Yes. Are people already trying to reach some athletic directors in the Big Ten? One that's pretty close to where I live? Yes. We're moving to a 35 to 40 top brands being a part of something. He's not saying two conferences going off and doing their own thing. He's talking 35 to 40 top brands. Well, look, we've always been honest here at Peek Around the Corner. Consolidation is here. It's not going away anytime soon. But we don't believe what Alberts believes. We don't even believe that the SEC and the Big Ten are going to go run go with their own only 2 conferences and not have access for any of the Big 12 schools, any other schools. In fact, I would argue that Greg Sankey, as he speaks today, continues to want G5 access into the playoffs. And I don't think he's just blowing smoke. But that's not what Trev Alberts is talking about here. I disagree with Trev Alberts. I don't think we're going to get to that point. Not for 10, 15, 20 years from now. Call me naive. We're moving to a 35 to 40 top brands being a part of something. That last part of it. He's talking about those schools going off doing their own thing in football at a different level than the rest of the FBS schools. We'll see about that. We shall see about that. I do not agree with Alberts at all. I do believe there's going to be 2 conferences that are going to be growing, more powerful, SEC and the Big 10. But the Big 12 schools, they're not going away. They're going to have access. They're going to have access. And G5 probably will continue to have access. Although I would admit that's on the knife's edge. But a Purdue, a Mississippi State, and Mississippi, other schools in the Big 10, you include Minnesota, Illinois. Let's get back to the article. Let's get through this article real quick. We got a lot of comments. All these moves are driven by one sport, that's football. And the football schedule is much more different than tennis or golf schedule. So these Olympic sports, the travel looks a little bit different. We're not there today, but I think in the next 10 years, the reality makes more and more sense. I even disagree with this. I don't think the Big Ten is going to give up their Olympic sports and say, okay, let's just combine all Olympic sports with everybody else. I don't even know how. I don't see the SEC saying to the baseball, okay, we'll just SEC, we'll just migrate our baseball, everything we do with baseball, and we'll just have it across the country. We'll just be a part of this big country league that has nothing to do with conferences. That's not going to happen. The SEC network's not going away. The Big Ten network's not going away. Now, will these bigger and bigger conferences regionalize their Olympic sports activities? Yes. That's one of the reasons why the Big Ten took 2 more schools out in the West. But to just migrate all these sports together across the board, that's not football, that's not basketball, I don't think that's going to happen either. I don't believe in any of this. Nebraska's realignment. Alberts obviously wasn't at his current post when Nebraska left the Big 12 for greener pastures for the Big 10. In hindsight, this decision appears more and more beneficial for Nebraska by the day. I thought at the time it was a good decision. You're looking for stability. The move to the Big 10 ensured that we were part of the haves, like we have the resources. It's obviously did not guarantee success. No, it did not. No, it did not. So this is not about making sure that you don't have enough money. This is not about making sure that if you don't have enough money, you can't win. That's not true. The Yankees don't win the World Series every year. The Cowboys don't win the Super Bowl every year. But money gives you a reasonable opportunity and, frankly, to fund the rest of your sports. And I'm going to end it right there. To fund the rest of your sports. That's why I don't think you can separate. In the Big Ten, you can't separate the women's volleyball from the football. You can't separate the lacrosse from the football. You can't separate the men's and women's hockey from the football. The same thing with the other conferences. So I'm not a believer in that. I'm not a believer in the 35 to 40 schools separating themselves from everybody else to play at the highest level of college football with no access for any of the other schools. TCU went to the championship game this year. Now, TCU, the revenue gap is going to grow between Big Ten, SEC, in relative to TCU and the rest of the Big 12 schools. It's going to get more difficult. That's why Florida State's trying to get out of the ACC. We understand that. That's why USC jumped to the Big Ten. That's why Oklahoma and Texas jumped to the SEC. But it doesn't mean that you shouldn't have access to compete at the highest level just because you don't make as much money. It doesn't mean that you can't compete if everything aligned correctly for your program, that you can't compete in baseball, in basketball, and even in football. So I do not believe in this 35 to 40 jumping in to a power two, or whatever you want to call this Super League. I don't believe that's going to happen. I don't believe that has at least in the next couple of decades. Do I believe the SEC is not going to grow weaker? Yes. Do I believe the Big Ten is not going to grow weaker? Yes. They're going to gain and gain and gain. And your Mark, he's done everything. He's done everything he did to make sure that the Big 12 institutions got into the room to make sure they had a voice in what's going to happen next, and he was successful. That's not going to get blown away here. That's not going to go away. Those are my opinions. Let's hear your opinions, your comments, your phone calls. Let's get to it right now. Holy smokes. Big schools just don't want to share the money. Sharing the money is one thing, but you got to provide access. That's what makes NCAA basketball tournament incredible. I know you can't do the same thing with football, but you have to have access. This cannot be a 35 to 40 football program and that's it at one level. Not in college football. The eyeballs will go away from the sport. And it's the eyeballs that feed the sport. If it wasn't for the passionate consumers, the college football fans, the sport would dry up. Look, I understand consolidation. I've been at the forefront. I have been predicting it. I have been saying it. We have been nailing it day in and day out, week in and week out, month in, month out. But when you're talking about 35 to 40 schools being a part of something, Trev Alberts, that's not going to work. That is not going to work. Okay, let's get back to your comments. Mo in sports, Ohio State, Michigan, Penn State happily share with the smaller schools. Have never asked for unequal revenue shares. Again, the Buckeyes are going to make a whole lot more money than Rutgers. And they should. Ticket sales, sponsorships, t-shirt sales, everything. Ohio State makes everything more than any other school in the Big Ten. And they deserve that. But we're talking about access. Only the Buckeyes, only the Nittany Lions, only the Wolverines, only Alabama, only Tennessee gets access to the playoffs. You're gonna hurt the sport dramatically. Unfortunately, I believe Trev Alberts was telling the truth of his opinion, what he believes is going to happen. And I hope that there are some people out there that listen to Trev. I know there's been people who heard that, raised an eyebrow. Look, Nebraska, you wouldn't be a part of the Big Ten if there weren't some certain Big Ten schools who voted you into the conference. So be careful, Nebraska. That's all I'm going to say about that. Okay, we'll get to your phone calls right now. Nebraska might not be good enough for the 35 to 40 teams. They're a big enough brand to be in that 35 to 40 team. They're a big enough brand, even though they haven't produced anything here in the Big Ten. But Albert said 35 to top 40 brands may be part of something. Be careful, Alberts. Be very careful. Big Ten, a lot of ears opened up when you said that. Because there's some schools in the Big Ten, some schools in SEC, most schools in the Big 12 are not going to be a part of that 35 to 40 something. Okay, let's get to your phone calls. You can talk about anything college football. The number 763-260-1333. The line is now open. I know this. Mason Smith, defensive lineman, LSU. In practice yesterday, ran off the field. He got injured. He was able to get himself off the field. We're going to be looking at that injury. Mason Smith, a significant player on the defensive line at LSU. They're playing Florida State September 3rd. Buckle up, Sunday. Also, Katie McNamara.
Call from
Rebecca. Go Huskies.
Rebecca, Miss Huskies on the line. The floor is yours.
Well, happy Sunday, Greg.
Happy Sunday to you.
Little General.
Yes.
Good.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. You know, I know we definitely disagree on this. I really do think we're heading back in that direction, and I put it in the chat a couple of times, but the FCS and the FBS split in the 70s for a reason. And just like reading the history and stuff like that, it feels almost like that. I mean, I don't see anybody getting kicked out of their conference, because I can only find one example of that ever happening with just Temple, I believe it was. And I mean, they'd be burning so many bridges. It's going to burn a lot of bridges doing this. That's like the biggest issue is if you did break away, you could only play those teams that broke away, right?
I would think so. Yes. Yeah.
I mean, because otherwise it's like, oh, you're playing a team from the division below, just like the FCS. It's not gonna, if you play more than one, it's not going to count toward this or that. But it feels like that's where it's heading, and you hear, Nebraska's comments, and then you kind of piece together why Florida State's doing what they're doing. It's just, it feels like this is where it's going. And there's two different things here, though. Now, I believe that Florida State is going to end up trying to do this because they're trying to get into one of the Power 2 conferences. But I don't think... but there's a difference between that and saying 35 to 40 schools separate themselves from everybody else. Like, structurally separate themselves. Well, let's say it does expand more, and both the SEC and the Big Ten end up at 20 schools each. There's 40.
Yeah.
And it's like, it just, it doesn't feel like it, but, in order to get to that, they might have to kick, and this is where I don't think it'll ever happen, is people talking about potentially kicking some schools out, a la like Indiana or Rutgers, like, even a Vanderbilt or something like that. I don't see it going to that level. But I mean, like, Florida State, all this could be settled if Notre Dame would just join the ACC already. But Stuart Mandel posted it. He keeps posting it. And he created a couple of years ago, a 28-team group that broke away and had an NFL-like model. He really did do that. And he keeps posting it. It's just, everything feels like we're heading there. And I think, like, Immaculate brought it up, I think in the chat, there's lawsuits galore, especially the schools that don't get in there. You know what I mean? Like, yeah. I wouldn't want to spurn Stanford is what I'm saying. I'm keeping them out. Like, that would not be. It's just some schools are going to be mad. And
but here's another thing. ESPN, Fox, other media companies getting involved in college football, college athletics. They're making money on all this. Okay, they're making money.
Yeah.
Even though so they're making money. They got all these time slots to fill. They got advertisers that want to advertise their products and services. And the media networks know that suddenly if you cut out a swath of schools from being able to participate at the highest level of college football, let's just stick to football. So let's just say that it's only the Big Ten and SEC schools that get to participate at the highest level. You're cutting out a lot of that content now that from the other schools now become less valuable. I don't even see how the media companies would go for this. That is just too. It's too elitist. It's too small of a universe for college sports. We're not talking professional here. We're talking college sports. The NCAA basketball tournament is fantastic because you have all these people, all these fan bases from across the country involved in this tournament. And now we're finally getting that in football. We're going to have a 12-team playoff, and it's going to be fantastic, Rebecca. Everybody in the PATC room, it's going to be unbelievable. And you know what else is going to happen with having just one? I'm sorry I'm on a rant here, Rebecca. Just give me a moment.
No, you're good.
Okay. Because we know that there's going to be at least one G5 school that's going to make the expanded playoffs in 2024 if they keep it like it the way it is. That's going to make all these G5 games more valuable. It's going to make their conference championship games more valuable. We're all going to keep in track of who's going to be that top-ranked G5 school, not just to get into a New Year's Six Bowl like Tulane, but to actually go into the playoffs. It's going to incorporate, it's going to franchise so many more fan bases and schools and universities and into the sport. If you cut this off at 35 to 40, I don't care how big these brands are. You're only shrinking the sport. I'm talking access. I'm not talking power and money. Yes, two conferences are going to make more power, more money than everyone else. But if you're going to shrink the access to the sport, if you're going to democratize the sport, you're going to sink the sport. Again, Rebecca, the floor is yours. I had to get that rant out.
No, you're good. And I agree with all those points. I also agree with just knowing that the FCS schools, they're only FCS in football. They're not FCS in any other sport for the most part. They're only an FCS program in football. That's why I'd say it could happen. They could break away. They already did it. The top 100 plus brands already broke off and created the FBS in the 70s. That's why I'm like, it could happen again. Yeah. I don't think you'll see relegation or anything like that. I just think it's feeling more and more like they're going to want more money. And ESPN and Fox, they're going to want to spend some cash. If they're going to spend their cash, they want to get the best eyeballs that they can. And it's like an Ohio State versus like a Texas in the college football playoff is going to draw more eyeballs than an Alabama versus a like Boise State or an Alabama versus like an Oklahoma State.
Yeah, I agree. But the Alabama-Texas game is eventually going to happen in the playoffs. With a 12-team playoff, You're going to get a Boise State versus Alabama, and you're going to bring in. It's more of the process of getting to the playoffs as well. I disagree with Josh Payton. A lot of people. The expanded playoffs are going to get so many more people involved throughout the entire regular season. The regular season games are going to mean more because there's going to be more teams on the bubble to get to the 12-team playoffs. Not just the G5 schools, but the Power 5 schools. I think that they're going to look at these numbers before we have a couple of years. I think they're going to evaluate those numbers. But when you think about the 40 biggest brands, right? Essentially, they're all in two conferences is where they'll end up. But if the 40 biggest brands are constantly the ones getting the most eyeballs, that's what ESPN and Fox need. They're spending money
they have to sell to advertisers. They have to bring in eyeballs. To get their money back, they have to have viewers, because those brands are like, I'm not selling my advertising dollars if I'm not reaching as many people as possible. This is how the NFL stays so small and doesn't expand, because the NFL probably could be at 60 teams if they wanted. But by being at 32, they have more eyeballs just sitting on them, because it's less, it's more, there's so much more demand, but they're just not filling it. You know what I mean? Like, everybody wants more football in the NFL, and they think they should expand. The NFL has resisted that. Even basketball, the NBA is starting to resist expansion and stuff like that because the money's so good. I'm just like, I'm with you. I think it could happen, but I don't think it will happen, not in the next 10 years. They're going to look at the data from these playoff games. I think they're going to need 2 contracts to figure it out. We obviously are in 1 starting next year, but I think they're going to have to, by 2030, they're going to have to decide, do these schools break away? Also, you keep hearing about these schools getting in trouble with the NCAA, and I hate to be that person, but it's not Alabama Birmingham that's getting in trouble with the NCAA. Michigan, it's Ohio State, it's Washington, and USC. It's never the G6 schools.
Yeah.
So.
Alrighty.
Like I said, Greg, he gave way too much information, but I can almost guarantee you he's said that because the presidents and chancellors are talking about it already.
Oh yeah, yes, no doubt about it. No doubt about it.
No doubt. Yep. I think they're academics though. They're going to look at the data points. They're going to evaluate it based on that, and then at that point, I think we'll know. But
okay.
Also, anybody in the chat who thinks they're going to kick somebody out of the conference, I don't see that ever happening. They just don't want to burn those bridges.
Okay. Thanks, Rebecca. I appreciate it.
You're welcome, Greg. Yep.
Thank you.
Great show going, Greg.
All right, 763-260-1333. Looks like we might have lost somebody. Somebody try to call again here. All right, lots of comments.
Call from
Moen.
What's going on, Mr. Buckeye? The floor is yours.
Well, I think this might be getting a little overblown here, Greg.
All right.
Trev Alberts, his initials are TA because he talks out of his ass all the time. That's not anything new. This is not about forming a super conference. This is about taking a position in the next college football playoff negotiations.
But that's not what he said, though.
I know that's not what he said. He's Trev Alberts, you know.
Yeah.
I don't put a lot of weight into what Trev Alberts said, you know.
Yeah.
But I think that's what he's trying to do. He's trying to take their position that, you know, you're going to have to give a little more to the top 3, or what I call the A3 conference, the Big 12, the Big 10, and the SEC. The G5s are going to make plenty of money. But you're probably going to lose those AQs. I think you lose the AQs and they either move to a 16-team format with no buys, or a 12-team format and it's just 12 best in.
I hope they don't. I hope they don't lose those AQs. I hope they. I hope they get one AQ. This is what I hope.
They might give them one.
This is what I hope. Right? I hope whoever is part of the autonomy, right? Who's ever Big 12, SEC, Big 10, probably ACC here in the next go around. Those 4 should get an automatic berth. Whoever wins the conference championship game, that team should get an automatic berth. And then among the P5s, there should be one automatic berth. I hope so. That's what I'm hoping for.
Yeah, I don't know that they're going to give that up. I mean, the G5s are going to make tons of money still, they're not gonna lose any money. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They're still gonna make plenty of money, especially when this contract works out. But, you know, give them one AQ. We'll do one AQ for the Big Ten, the Big 12, the SEC. But then, you know, at large berths, you're going to have to give more consideration to more teams in the A3. And I think that the G5s, you're going to see them do some kind of crossover championship game at the end where you get, you know, the Mountain West champion plays the AAC champion to get that extra game to try and boost them to the part where they might actually get an at-large bid out of a 12 best situation. But, yeah, I don't put too much weight into what Trev Alberts says. I mean, if you just Google Trev Alberts stupid things, it's going to return probably 10,000 results. So
I do appreciate Trev Alberts, and I'm not going to go into too many details of it, but I do appreciate him because loose lips sink ships. Let's put it that way.
Yeah,
that's all I'm going to say.
I know what you're saying, but what you're talking about, what Trev Alberts did there, that was not.
No.
Come on. I mean, there was bigger people behind Trev Alberts who were also screaming. So he was just the one out there being the mouthpiece, which is exactly what he's doing right now.
We do have breaking news here. Sheep in Wolves Clothing just stated that Chris Nee is the Florida State 247 guy. Nee just stated he would be surprised if Florida State moved by Tuesday, per 247 Florida State message board. So it looks like, you know.
War Chance report last week pretty much showed them backing off that.
Yeah.
That this was saber rattling to add instability to the ACC. They don't want to make that kind of investment. They're going to push for the dissolution of the ACC, and that's exactly why they were against adding Stanford and Cal. They did not want any more votes they were going to say keep the ACC together. They want to try and get that up to 8 or 9 votes to dissolve so that they can all bounce and go on their merry way. Yeah, but I wouldn't put too much into what Trev Alberts says. I think that's kind of a nothing burger, except the fact that he says expansion will continue.
Yeah.
Which I don't disagree with, and I think the biggest part of that expansion is going to be the Big Ten's 4th media partner. I don't think that they're done yet. The Big Ten is going to tack on a little extra to this contract. Everybody's going to make a little more money with a streaming partner. I still think Amazon comes back to the table. We get a Friday night game, preferably with a West Coast team. Call it Friday Out West, or come up with some cute marketing gimmick.
Yeah.
And everybody gets paid a little more. And Notre Dame should bend the knee.
Yeah.
Bend the knee, Notre Dame. This is all on you. Just bend the knee and we can get this all sorted out. Pick one. You got the Big 12, the ACC, or the Big 10. Pick one.
Yeah.
Or the SEC. I'm sorry, the SEC.
Yeah.
Just do something. Can't keep on pussyfooting around this. This is on Notre Dame. Notre Dame needs to make their move. So, no future NCAA investigations without the death penalty for Michigan.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Mr. Buckeye. Appreciate it.
Call from.
Oh, you dropped off. Call again. Whoever was on the phone there, call again. Cheeseburger Gate. Mark Cora won't be buying a Trev a drink on August 31st. Jim from Minnesota's in the chat.
Call from.
KV.
All right, the floor is yours. What do you got to say?
Oh, I've got 4 quick topics I want to talk to you about. Just pick your brain on them a little bit.
Beautiful.
First of all, the Big Ten TV contract. I'm understanding this right. Fox has the big noon game, CBS has the afternoon game, and NBC has the early evening game. Is that correct?
Correct.
So, where are they? Where does Notre Dame get a TV contract from if they go back to NBC? Because didn't the networks say they were going to promote each other and not compete against each other?
Yeah, they're going to NBC, CBS, and Fox are going to cross promote Big Ten games on Saturday, and also they're going to promote Big Ten games on NFL Sunday.
All right. Well, if NBC has Notre Dame, aren't they breaking the contract by promoting Notre Dame and not cross promoting the Big Ten?
No, NBC is going to be promoting Big Ten and NBC, and I gotta believe that. I gotta believe that on a Saturday night Big Ten game, NBC is going to be holding a Big Ten game that they're going to be promoting the next week's Saturday Big Ten game, and they're also going to be promoting the next time Notre Dame is on NBC. They're going to be promoting both. Now remember, Notre Dame's not on NBC every week, right? They're only on NBC during their home games. So 7 home games a week, 7 weeks a season. Big Ten's going to be on NBC every single week.
Right, but the Notre Dame plays the early afternoon game, so if they're on a home game, wouldn't they be in competition with the CBS game?
Yeah, they would be, but they would be true. But they're I envision NBC promoting Big Ten during Notre Dame games, and during the Big Ten game, I would envision them bringing up Notre Dame, but maybe not. Maybe they're not allowed to talk about Notre Dame, but they talked about buttressing in NBC. One of the things they said about once they got the contract, Big Ten contract, they said this is going to help buttress promote their Notre Dame games on NBC. So I got a feeling promotion is going to go back and forth between the Notre Dame games towards Big Ten and Big Ten towards Notre Dame. I could be wrong,
Okay.
but
Yeah, simple enough. That was confusing to me. Second question, the 4 that were left out of the Pac-12, I guess part of the problem was branding and they don't have an audience. Why wouldn't they go to the AAC or someplace where they get Eastern exposure to try to increase their branding regardless of the money if they don't want to be left out?
well, they might go to the the ACC or the AAC.
AAC.
Well, they might go to the AAC. That might happen. Actually, it could. I posted on the Twitter account the 18-team conference, what it would look like. I'm having a hard time wrapping my arms around that because that means that Stanford would be playing Charlotte, right? But that there's a chance of that happening.
Well, I mean, specific to Oregon State, it seems like they're the most ready, competitive-wise, to do that.
Yeah.
And they're just geographically disadvantaged. So.
Yes, I agree with you. Yeah.
And then lastly, the Big 12 presidents approved the expansion of 2 more schools. Do you think Yormark is savvy enough to find a sponsor or something to slip and get Florida State and Clemson if that thing falls down?
Yormark got the okay to explore a 17th and 18th for right now. That doesn't mean that the networks are going to actually pay for it, but he got the okay to explore it. And I don't believe that, no offense to the Big 12, but if Florida State's going to risk this, getting out of the ACC, it's not going to go to the Big 12. They're going to want to go to the SEC, the Big 10, because you're going to need to actually do this, to risk this for Florida State perspective. They're gonna have to know that they're gonna be doubling their money eventually, real soon, by going to the SEC or the Big Ten.
My thought on it was, as Yormark sees what's going on, he knows he's at best in third place. And with his NASCAR background, maybe finding sponsorships outside of the TV partners to pay them coming in.
I guess, but I don't see it happening. I don't see Big 12 being a part of the Florida State Clemson. Big 12 is going to be there whenever the ACC implodes, and I believe it will. At some point, years down the road, that Big 12 has put themselves in a position to clean up after SEC and the Big 10 eats.
All right, my friend. Thank you for the conversation. I enjoy your show. Have a good
Appreciate it.
weekend.
Thank you so very much. Call again. Phone lines open 763-260-1333. If you haven't done it, please subscribe to the channel. Smash that like button. Smash it. Don't just hit it. Smash it if you like our content. Share the video with your family and friends. If you want to make sure your comment gets read, just put the donation, hit the $sign. You know how it works. Visit our merchandise store. There's a link provided in the description. Let's get to more comments. Wait for the next phone call. Lot of comments. Charlotte is a long ways for the Beavers to swim or fly. Pack 18 is not happening. Nebraska isn't in the top 50 brands. Yeah, they are. Yeah. Nebraska's not in the top 50 brands. Yeah, Nebraska's easily in the top 50 brands. Okay. Vincent, Big 20 will be Cal and Stanford. Cardinal won't abandon Berkeley for Notre Dame, like it or not. Moen Sports, fourth partner means additional expansion. DW2CB, thank you for your super chat, for your generosity. History is being unkind to the Pac-12, especially when a Trojan horse voted against expansion and then bolted the stables. College football playoff to become top 40 JV NFL, and I hope it doesn't happen. It's only going to shrink the sport. It's only going to shrink the eyeballs if that should happen. And I don't think it's going to happen anytime soon. Thank you once again, DW, for your super chat. Rebecca, what do you think of Oliver Luck being hired by the Pac-4? Thank you for your super chat, Rebecca, for your generosity to this channel and all your wonderful phone calls and comments. Why not? Oliver Luck, smart guy, been successful. This is about his 11th different job in the last 3 years. So, I don't know. I heard some reporting that Oliver Luck and Mike Oresco were talking. AAC in those Pac-4 schools. Oliver Luck likes to wheel and deal. That's what they need. Hopefully he's doing all the talking, and hopefully George Klikoff has been pushed to the side. So, thank you once again for your super chat, Rebecca. Oliver Luck, good hire. Wisconsin's not in the top 100 brands. Go for Tony, taking a shot at the Badgers. I'm ready for football season start. Absolutely. We're getting there. We are close. Dublin, Ireland. Notre Dame versus Navy. That's coming up. 13 more days. Phone lines are now open again. Phone lines are now open, 763-260-1333. We talked about Trev Alberts' interview with the Journal Star. Talk about Florida State. Chris Nee, Florida State, 247 Sports. Florida State, 247 Sports. Doesn't believe it's going to happen now.
Call from
Steve.
Steve, the floor is yours. What's going on, sir?
How you doing, Greg?
Doing good.
For those too young to remember Trev Alberts on CNN and ESPN, just go back if you can and do some research. Probably one of the most arrogant guys in the history of sports television. He left or was let go by ESPN because he wanted to be the big guy on ESPN when it came to college football, and they told him no. So he moved on to other things. There's no way that 34 or 36 or 40 teams will ever be college football. Okay?
Yeah.
There's just, as much as people think that everybody wants to watch Washington and Ohio State or, Alabama and USC. No. Truthfully, they would be shrinking who would watch games across the entire nation. I'm not saying there wouldn't be 72 teams that would be in the A3 or whatever number anybody wants to come up with, but it's just not going to be, if they want to call them super conferences, then with all due respect to the Vanderbilts and the Northwesterns and everybody else, there would be relegation, right?
Yeah.
If the ACC or the SEC and the Big Ten want to be the two big dogs and then bring in, whoever they want to from across the country to make it 36 teams, then there's going to be relegation. It just is. So at this point, maybe 20 years from now, I won't have to worry about it 20 years from now probably, but 20 years from now could happen, but it's not going to happen for a long, long time, people. Let's get off of the Power 2 kick. It's fun to talk about maybe to some, but it's just not feasible.
No, I don't think it is.
It's not going to happen.
No.
For a lot of reasons, it's not feasible.
Yeah.
So, and then with the Florida State thing, they're on the clock now, 48 hours.
Yes, sir.
I think it's a big nothing. And you brought up a great point in your monologue. Next spring, they want to start this again. Boy, have they lost leverage with everybody involved. Everybody involved.
Yeah.
Conference mates, projected landing spots. That all will shrink on them a bit. And then not to say how long the lawsuits could last, because there will be some. There will be lawsuits, whether it's from ESPN, whether it's from other teams in the ACC, whether from the ACC as a whole. I mean, I know they want out. They think they can buy their way out. Didn't their athletic director or president or head of their border region say they had the gore figured out?
They had it handled. They've got it handled. Yeah.
Okay. Well, we shall see, I guess. We shall see.
Yeah.
But it's a bunch of bravado right now, Greg, and it'll be interesting to see what happens in the next 48 hours, my friend.
Got it. Thank you, Steve. Bearcat Steve, thank you so much.
Thanks.
Beautiful.
Call from
Derek.
Derek, the floor is yours. What do you got to say?
Hey, I'm like you, man, with this whole P2 idea. I think that would be just killer for the sport as a whole.
Yeah.
Excuse me. Like I'm the one that posted in your chat. As long as Louisville's got access to the playoff, I'm ready for this to be over.
Yeah,
Just
access is
tell me who I'm
important.
playing.
Yeah. Yes.
Just tell me who I'm playing and we'll show up.
Yeah.
We've played this game since we were in Conference USA. We're not afraid to play anybody anywhere.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
and as far as Florida State, they're just full of crap, in my opinion. I think if they had the money to leave, they've left by now. So hopefully the conference doesn't cave into them and give them whatever they want. But I'm sure they will. It seems to be the MO for Tobacco Road. So.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, I don't think they'll be talking Louisville. I don't think they'll be talking like this next year, right? Either they act and they do it or they don't, but I don't think you're going to be hearing them talking as much next spring, next summer.
Oh yeah, I totally agree.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's a reason they hired J.P. Morgan. There's a reason they hired them. So
Yeah.
clearly they don't have the money, or they wouldn't have hired them. So, but yeah, that's all I had, man.
Okay, appreciate it. Call again, sir, Mr. Cardinal.
All right, see you.
All right. Beautiful. Louisville Cardinals in the house. Everybody's in the house. Again.
Call from
Immaculate.
Immaculate. Can you just hold 1 second?
Absolutely.
I just want to make it clear. Like Mike Norris says here, I would disagree with Mo in sports. The Big Ten and the SEC want every dollar to themselves in football. The ACC is the last obstacle. I do believe the ACC is going to implode at some point. Again, power to if it's in relation to two conferences being the most powerful conference, making sure that they have the most chips at the table when talking about the expanded playoffs, the money, and everything else that goes with it. Yes, of course, that's what we've been talking about. That's consolidation. But when we're talking about power two, driving access away for everybody that's outside of that power two, that is what I don't agree with. I don't think it's going to happen. And if I end up being wrong, and if it does happen, I think it's going to hurt the sport that we love. Again, I just want to make clear, because people are using power two in different ways. I just want to make it clear what we're talking about here at Peek Around the Corner. Immaculate, the floor is yours, Mr. Hawkeye.
Well, good to talk to you again. You are a busy guy today, very popular, so we could go into any of this as much as you want. But we've also gone into this, you and I together multiple times.
Yeah.
There's just one thing I want to bring to your attention, and then I can either let it go so other people can call in, or we can continue on. But
Yep.
I just want to bring the idea of that in order to get the autonomous conferences threaten to leave the NCAA. The same threat never really holds the same weight twice. Yet there are some things they need, some new governance areas for the autonomous vote. So what I think is going to happen, just bringing this up, is the G conferences will work with them to threaten to leave the NCAA, and in return, those G conferences are going to get some serious concessions from DA conferences by using those rules. So we'll see what's coming, but I think that that's going to play a big part in this 2026 thing, and that's what consolidation is about getting everyone where they want to be so that they're willing to play along.
Yeah, I agree with you.
This talk about taking out and people out, I think it's actually going opposite of where things are actually going. So I don't know if they're doing that on purpose, if there's there's just difference of opinions up at the top, but I'm looking and going, it doesn't make any sense money-wise to get down to that small number of schools when you have this many schools with all these people following and giving a damn. It just doesn't seem like a good business model to me.
Yeah, look, when the SEC and the Big Ten, when they go up, when they negotiate whatever this playoff expansion is going to look like, 2026 and beyond, and maybe here in 2024, 2025, they may change it. One of the things SEC and the Big Ten is going to say is, we provide the most eyeballs. Okay? Big 12 is going to say, we provide the next most eyeballs. And the G5 do not provide that much eyeballs. So therefore, G5 schools are going to get less of a cut of the distribution money. Okay? Just like they have in the past, they're going to continue in the future. All of that makes sense, right? All of it makes sense. So again, I'm not saying that the Big Ten is not going to make more, SEC is not going to make more. They should make more. They're going to probably push and push and push, more at large berths, whatever. But I'm talking about the overall health of the sport is not going to be helped by cutting access off with 35 to 40 schools. Like, nobody has access to at the highest level of the sport. I believe that's going to hurt the sport. So I just want to again make it clear. I anticipate, we've talked about this, Immaculate, SEC and Big Ten are going to push their weight around like you're talking about. This is a part of negotiations. G5 might have to give up this to get this, to keep access. All that is fine. But, Trev Alberts, I want to try to find this again. Give me a second, Immaculate.
Mm-hmm.
Give me a second here. Of course, I can't find it I can't find it because I'm an idiot. I can't find it. But when he says 35 to 40 top brands being a part of something.
Correct.
I don't think he meant 35 to 40 top brands being a part of negotiations, making sure we get what we want. I think he's actually thinking about something that I don't want to see happen.
Oh, I agree. But also, you got to remember where the perspective that this is coming from.
Mm-hmm.
This is Nebraska. Arguably, they are of the 35 to 40 top brands. They certainly believe they are. And that's the perspective this is coming from. So, if that was to happen, how does that benefit Nebraska? Not having to recruit against who else now?
Yeah.
So,
yeah, I
take it with a grain of salt.
I get it. Yeah.
And I'm saying that as an Iowa guy who isn't really in a much better position, but, we have to accept reality.
Yeah.
So that's pretty much all I have to say. I mean, there's a whole lot, the FSU story that's going on, but I know you got a lot of people who want to call in, so I'm going to get off and let them get their part too. But I just want to bring that part up about I do think that the A's and the G's are actually going to be working together here very closely very soon because it's in their best interest.
I think so too.
So with that,
yeah.
Have a great day, Greg. Good talking to you again.
Thank you, Mr. Hawkeye. Appreciate it. I don't know. You phone lines are open. You bring in $2 billion a year, and you take 80% of that, and you cut that up with the Power 5 programs. You take 20% of that and you cut it up to the G5 programs. That's a whole lot of money for those G5 programs. That is life. That is being able to pay for all your sports. That's a whole lot of money. And I do not think for one moment, I might be naive here. I might be the dumbest person on the planet. You know what? I'm probably am. I do not think that the SEC, the Big Ten, the Big 12, whatever remains of the ACC, I do not believe they want to cut the knees out from under the G5 football programs. I mean, the Big Ten still plays MAC schools in their non-conference because they know how important that money is. that when they send the check to keep those institutions going?
Call from
Attorney Dave.
Attorney Dave, the floor is yours. What do you got to say, sir?
How you doing today, Greg?
I'm doing good. I'm a little hot and bothered. I'm a little fired up because of Trev Alberts. But hopefully we lay the smack on him on August 31st, Thursday night. But I'm more interested in hear what you have to say, Attorney Dave.
Well, I do think that having 30, 35 teams that would break away, that wouldn't give any access like you're talking about, would be a difficult issue for one of these antitrust lawsuits.
Yeah.
If you think about it, most of these leagues, the NFL, Major League Baseball, they have an antitrust exemption. So that's what creates the situation where they can own the market, and they don't have the XFL or whatever filing a lawsuit. Of course, I think they had back in the 80s, you had the USFL lawsuit against the NFL, which was like for $1 or something like that, based on antitrust issues. So, but there's a real threat there. So, it's funny because I've had this discussion with a lot of people about how something like this could work, and I don't think you're going to have like a pure breakaway like that. I do think that there may be different visions, though. There may be a vision that's happening in Trev Alberts' world and some of the folks that he surrounds himself with, and a vision that Greg Sankey has that's a little bit different in the SEC. I do think that, from what I understand, is they have more of a vision of like a Champions League type aspect over in Europe, where you give access to everybody, but you secure a certain amount of spots that would go to like an SEC, a certain amount of spots that would go to the Big Ten, a certain amount of spots that would give access to everybody. I think that that's an interesting method that could be copied, and there's been a lot of interesting literature about relegation, Premier League, how all those things have worked as well. There's a book that recently came out within the last couple of years that's definitely a good read for folks trying to think through what something could look like in college football moving forward. But I think Trev might be getting a little ahead of himself.
Yeah, I think so.
Be the best way to put it, because I don't see there being a pure breakaway. And like I said, if there was, I think you'd have some serious issues, with that. And I'll add one thing about the whole Florida State situation. I know you brought it up last time, was does the ACC have to accept the amount of money that would be offered? And the answer is no. That ACC does not have to accept a certain amount of money that FSU would bring if they were to try to buy out basically the contract. The angle would be, though, that the courts prefer monetary damages rather than forcing somebody to do something that they don't want to do. Yeah. But it's not a given. So that's just to answer that question too. But man, I love your show as always. You got any questions for me or anything like that? Nope. I'm good. The whole ACC doesn't have to accept the check. I understand that. But then I'm thinking, when they don't, maybe that's what Florida State is hoping. Like, maybe they think they can get a court to say, hey, come on, look at this. They're not even accepting this amount of money. That might be what Florida State is thinking. I don't know. No, that's right. I think it's hey, we are in an irreparable situation at this point, and telling a court, hey, like when it gets to that point, if they were to breach, basically saying like, hey, it's better at public policy basically to let us buy this thing out, to offer this amount of money, rather than forcing a relationship that isn't going to work and that we don't want to be a part of. And that generally is the way that the courts see things, is trying to do that rather than force people to continue into business relationships they don't want to be a part of.
All righty. Thank you, sir. Attorney Dave, please call again, especially if something pops here. Thank you. I tell you what, here's John. Honestly think South Carolina could give Georgia its best game of the season before the Tennessee game. A lot of people talking about South Carolina. Not enough people are talking about Kentucky Wildcats, I tell you that. They're the sleeper team in the SEC. Keep your eyes on Kentucky. Devin Leary, the great quarterback.
Call from
Taylor Mott.
Taylor, the floor is yours. What do you got to say, sir?
Hi, Mr. Flugar. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. I just wanted to talk about consolidation and just give you my thoughts briefly. I won't take up too much of your time.
Got it.
So all I wanted to say is that, I'm stating the obvious here, but the networks are clearly driving this. And what the gentleman said about, 35 to 40 teams, I think it's probably a little soon for that, but I don't see that being too far off. Just the evolution and the nature of what's happening to college athletics right now.
Okay. When you say too far off, how many years you thinking here?
That I couldn't tell you, but it's just, you look at the moves that have already been made in college sports and seeing which teams fall where, and to me, it seems like that could be the road that we're going down, where these networks are wanting to pair schools and brands of similar profile, where they just hoard all the biggest brands and then pair them and make them play each other every weekend.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I don't know, and he probably is way too early, but I don't see how we could go back to the old local rivalries and all that. It seems like we can't put the toothpaste back in the tube.
Yes, there's some of that. I agree with that. But sometimes we get these old rivals back too, like the Holy War rival between Utah and BYU. We're getting that back now. So, but yeah.
That's a good point, and I would have never guessed that Colorado would come back to the Big 12.
Yeah.
I live in Big 12 country.
Yes.
So, but, and that goes against the logic that I'm saying. But I just think, if it were to fall like this, if Clemson and Florida State were to go to the SEC and say, I don't know, Miami, Stanford, Cal, and North Carolina went to the Big Ten, then I feel like we're going down that rabbit hole where the networks, I don't know if greed's the right word, but they're just going to want to put the best matchups every weekend. And maybe this is really far-fetched and way down the road, but is it possible, you think, if maybe the biggest brands in college football split off and form their own league? Kind of what that man suggested.
Well, that's what I think Trev Alberts was getting to. Again, could it happen 15, 20 years down the road? Yeah, I'm not going to completely say it can't happen, of course. I'm just saying I think it's going to hurt the sport.
I got you. I agree, too.
Yeah.
I mean, as a Big 12 fan, I miss the old Big 12, and I hate what's happening, but it is what it is at this point, So
I know basketball is different than football. I get it, PATC community. I'm not too bright, but I understand that. But I'm just going to throw this out as an example. If you cut the NCAA tournament down to where it's just ACC, Big 12, Big 10, SEC, that tournament is not going to gather as many eyeballs as it does now. You're not going to have the same storylines. Not everybody's going to be invested in. You're not going to have David versus Goliath. We're finally getting to a David and Goliath setup to where most of the time Goliath is going to whoop David, right, in the 12-team playoffs. But we're finally getting to that point. And then some people are hoping or wanting or thinking that this 35 to 40 top brands are going to separate themselves. I hope it doesn't happen. I don't think it will for quite a while. If it does, and when it does, if it does, it's just going to hurt the sport, in my opinion.
I agree with you completely, Greg. And you're right. I mean, think about how many high-profile teams, especially in basketball, who aren't a part of the Power 3 or 4 right now.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
I mean,
I don't know. We'll see what happens.
Look. I know. Look, I get it. SEC and the Big Ten, they're expanding the revenue gap between themselves and others. I get it. Big 12 and the ACC are expanding the revenue gap between themselves and the G5 conferences. I get it. But this playoff money is going to be able to elevate these G5 programs. They're going to be able to pay for other sports. I don't think the top schools across the country are going to take the knees out from under these guys. This is not. And look, Tulane 45, USC 42. It happened just last year. Michael Pratt's coming back for Tulane, a great quarterback. What are you going to do? It's 35-40 is too small of a universe for this grand game that we love in college football. It's just too small. But thanks for the call.
Excellent point.
Yeah.
I mean, and you see all the time where guys maybe don't get the cut. They don't make the cut at Auburn or Alabama or major schools. And then they go and play. They step down and play in a group of 5 league, and then they shine. And some of the best quarterbacks in NFL history come from these leagues.
Yes.
You know.
Yeah.
So.
All righty.
But yeah, I just wanted to give you my thoughts, and thank you so much for taking my call.
Appreciate it. Call again, sir. I'm just, it's just too small. 35-40 is too small.
Call from
Anthony Manzano.
Anthony, the floor is yours. What do you got to say?
To send a voicemail, press 2.
Are you there, Anthony?
Yes, I'm here.
All right, the floor is yours.
Hi, Greg. How are you today?
I'm doing good. How are you doing, sir?
I'm doing well. Greg, this is a thought I had in the chat. I'm not sure if you saw it when I posted it. For me, this is what I see happening in the future with the SEC. I think for me, I'm not sure if this is even feasible or even realistic. For me, I'm thinking the SEC wants to control the whole South, like from the Southeast all the way to the Southwest.
Yeah.
And they cannibalize both the ACC and the Big 12. Is that feasible and realistic, or I'm being too pie in the sky with that prediction?
Repeat that. SEC wants all the South.
No, they want the SEC. I bet you wants to control the whole South. So what I see happening is they control from Clemson all the way to Arizona and stuff like that. So they have all the Texas teams and Clemson and Arizona, the 4 corner schools. Not Utah.
I don't think so.
You think it's realistic and feasible?
No, I don't think the SEC. The commissioner, his job is to look out for the current SEC schools, not to dilute their value, not to dilute their athletic departments, give them as much exposure as possible. And I think expanding with all those schools would only dilute the revenue slices of his current schools. I don't think that would ever happen.
Actually, then eliminate the Big 12. How about just adding the ACC, I mean. Still no?
The SEC adding the ACC?
Yeah.
Still no. No. The SEC is going to only eat what they want to eat, and they'll probably eat a few more times down the road, but they're not going to go to the SEC. If the SEC ever wanted to split away from everybody, including the Big Ten, and just have their own universe, their own football universe, they could do it today. I don't think it would be as successful. as if they keep doing what they're doing. But if they wanted to, do it, they could do it today. They don't have to add all these schools.
No. The reason why I'm saying the ACC, I understand you don't think it happens, but the reason why I say that is because realistically, you think, I understand it dilutes their brand, but don't you think they want to stick it to the Big Ten and maybe control all the Eastern Seaboard from Pittsburgh all the way down to Miami? and not have the Big Ten.
I think Greg Sankey's more interested in making sure that Kentucky, South Carolina, Florida, that they're making as much money as possible, can have as much exposure as possible. I think he wants that much more than sticking it to the Big Ten. I don't see this grand SEC expansion happening. Will they expand in the future? Yes, but not to incorporate a whole other conference just to make sure that the Big Ten doesn't get to the East. The Big Ten's going to eventually get to the East, Southeast, no matter what the SEC does. Yeah.
And realistically, Greg, in your honest opinion, which 4 schools do you think go from the ACC goes to the SEC and the Big Ten? For me, I see this happening. I see Clemson, Miami, Florida State, and North Carolina going to the Big Ten, and then I can't remember who else. Whatever teams are left in the base from the ACC, I think North Carolina State, Virginia Tech, and Virginia, and what's it called? And maybe Pittsburgh go to the ACC, SEC. Can you see that happening?
I don't believe Pittsburgh's going to go to the SEC. I think Pittsburgh's going to end up in the Big 12. You know what? I've stayed away from speculating too much on who's going where because I need to know how the ACC is going to implode to determine what schools are going to go where. In other words, I think what school goes where is largely dependent on how does the ACC implode. I will say Miami, Florida is probably the chalk in what school is most of a lock to go to the Big Ten.
You don't think...
It doesn't mean I don't think other schools are going to the Big Ten. I'm just saying I think Miami and Florida, above all the ACC schools, are the biggest lock to go to the Big Ten because I don't think the SEC wants Miami and Florida, and I do think there's interest from the Big Ten to get Miami and Florida. But other than that... Go ahead.
No, this is what confuses me, Greg. Why would I understand there's a rivalry between Florida and Florida State, but there's bad blood with those two entities. Wouldn't you think that the Big Ten would rather have Florida State than Miami?
They might rather have Florida. Okay, they might want Florida State more than Miami, but I'm just saying.
No. The reason why I say, for me, I would think it would make sense because they already recruited Miami. Why not the SEC bring in Miami already? Because they recruit there already, in that they don't want to have competition in terms of the athletes that they want to get, or it's just Florida wouldn't allow it. You think?
There's a couple reasons, and I'll end the call this way. The SEC doesn't have any private schools in their conference. Big Ten does. Okay. Miami, Florida is the least of what I would call SEC schools within the ACC. There's a lot of reasons why I believe Miami, Florida is pretty much a lock to go to the Big Ten. I'm going to stick with that. That doesn't mean that they're the number one target of the Big Ten. North Carolina, Florida State could be heavier targets for the Big Ten, but the SEC is going to try to eat first, and those are also SEC targets. I don't believe Miami, Florida is an SEC target in any way. So that's why I say that. But thanks for the call. We got to go to the next call. I appreciate it. Thank you so much. You're right. Vandy is a private. You're correct on that. Thank you for correcting me, David M. I think of them in a different category. But thank you, David M. Appreciate it. Thanks for correcting me. My point still stands, however.
Call from
Boo to the evil Badgers.
Boo Evil Badgers. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Greg. I had to do that for Tony. This is Ryan, but I had to do that for Tony. Agree with it. And the Big Ten should pay for future expansion by just withholding from the Badgers distribution every year. So anyway, going on. Hey, Greg, I want to point out something that people should realize, that conferences aren't expanding for the sake of expansion. They're doing it because there's additional value to be gathered there. But in the economic sense, there's a concept called the law of diminishing returns. And, there comes a certain point where there's kind of becomes such a saturation and a limited capacity as far as TV slots that are available that, the more that the Big Ten and SEC add, the future additions have to bring more and more value, and a lot of those are coming off the board. I want to point this out is I don't think, I think the next focus of the round of consolidation right now is probably going to be in the G5 space. I think you're going to see some consolidation there. But Immaculate can point this out a lot better than I can. But I think right now, that's probably there probably will be a break for right now. As far as the ACC goes, it seems to me like Florida State probably was trying to stir trouble to see if they could build momentum to do something. But it seems like they seem to be walking some stuff back right now. I don't know if you have the same impression, Greg.
No, I don't think they're walking anything. Florida State, I don't think they're walking anything back. I think they're. Now this is pretty much speculation on my part, but
yeah.
What we were told at Peek Around the Corner, we were told that the Big Ten would not have any talks with Florida State.
Yeah.
Unless they release themselves legally from the grant of rights. And SEC probably holds the same. So maybe Florida State, maybe it's just too much of a gamble because they know that there is no secure landing spot if they should do this until they get themselves out of the gore. But I'm just throwing that out there.
No, and I think that's exactly right. I would point out that I've said this before. I don't think the ACC is crumbling in the next 18 months. But at the same time, I don't believe it makes it to 2036.
Yeah.
I think in the early 2030s, when the Big Ten, SEC, and Big 12 all come up for the next media deals, you're going to see a pretty significant bump beyond the ACC. And I also think at that point, too, with things like cord cutting and things, it could be that ACC network may become more of an albatross financially to ESPN. But this is, I think the real collapse of the ACC is going to occur in the early 2030s. And what's going to really drive it is going to be if a revenue gap, a significant revenue gap, I'd want to say about 10 to 15 million more per school, if a revenue gap emerges between the Big 12 and the ACC. Because I think that the ACC and the grant of rights, I think, right now the dissolution theory is kind of bogus, but if we get to the point where 10 to 12 ACC teams have a landing spot somewhere that's a better financial position, I think the scenario becomes far more plausible than it is right now. And, I think the interesting thing that people need to keep in mind of is if you see people like, Brett Yormark, looking for every way to find and increase revenue for his schools, not just through media, but just through other things. And then you look at Jim Phillips, who Jim's a smart guy, but he's also, he's sort of not from that media background and is kind of more of a college administrator and may not have the same creativity that a Petiti or a Sankey or a Yormark have. And, I think that might be kind of an area where the ACC could really fall behind leadership-wise. But I think that's what's going to have to develop, in my opinion, for this to all fall apart. I think Florida State, they can pout and they can raise all the money, which I think is kind of funny because if you're talking about 500 to 600 million to get out, that's like I think that's like 38 to 46 million dollars per year over the next 10 years. Which why not spend that money on keeping your program relevant, because that seems like that's just enough to match the revenue gap. But I get what they're talking about, but I sort of think that that's just kind of, you know, cutting your nose off to spite your face. But I certainly think that at the end of the day, I think that the ACC is probably more towards, it's probably more like 5 or 6 or 7 years away from this kind of culminating. I could be wrong, and I'll definitely take the L. I mean, I have as many L's as, you know, the Rutgers Scarlet Knights or other schools or the Indiana Hoosiers do in the Big Ten. But, you know, that's just sort of my thought. And as far as the Mountain West right now, I think you're likely going to see a merger between the Mountain West and the 4 remaining Pac-12 schools, and unless Stanford and Cal can't afford to do it, unless they agree to go into one of the remaining A5 or A4 leagues for free. I think they're kind of out in the island. But I'm going to let some other callers talk, Greg. Thanks for your insight as always, and have a great day, everybody. And can't wait. We're almost 2 weeks away. Actually, I think next week. But football soon, folks.
Got it. Appreciate it. Thank you, Ryan. Talking about Rutgers, keep your eye on Rutgers. They got the new offensive coordinator, Kirk Shiraka from Minnesota. Real good offensive coordinator. I think he's going to shrink that playbook down. Wimsatt, the quarterback, is going to be. He's getting great instruction from Kirk Shiraka. Kirk Shiraka, he's the guy who developed Joe Flacco way back, and he's done a great job with PJ Fleck. Didn't get much of a shot with Penn State. Came back to Minnesota, had another good year. They're going to be so. I think Greg Schiano, Rutgers, not going to be an exciting offense, but going to be a consistent run the ball offense, play action, throw that slant pass over the middle type of offense, and I think Rutgers is going to do pretty good this year. How many games will they win? 4, maybe 4, but I think they're going to be better this year. Plus, Wimsatt got some playing time, the quarterback last year, that he needed so very much. But I think we're going to close it up for now. We did a live show, almost 2 hours, right at 2 hours here. Sunday afternoon, we had to talk about the Trev Alberts interview with Journal Star. We went through it. I agreed with some of it, disagreed with some of it. Trev Alberts, he likes to talk, and in some ways we like that here at Peek Around the Corner. We've been able to, he likes to talk. We'll just leave it at that. So we like Trev Alberts. We don't always agree with Trev Alberts at Nebraska. We did know that Nebraska did support Oregon and Washington and have for the last year to the inclusion to the Big Ten. So Trev Alberts does have good. We like having Trev Alberts in the Big Ten. Loose lips, cloak and dagger. If you're new to the show, before you leave, please subscribe to our channel. Smash that like button before you go and share this video with your friends and family. We appreciate you all coming in so very much. And make sure that if you buy a merchandise, an item from our merchandise store, take a picture of it with the merchandise with you, tell a story about it, and send it to my DM direct message at my Twitter account at Flag Empire. And we're going to post the picture. We're going to tell the story that you told me at the DM on the Twitter account, and we're going to talk about it here at Peek Around the Corner. So everybody's going to find out about each other here in the PATC community. So make sure you start doing that. That's going to be a fun part of the show going forward. college football right around the corner, Dublin, Ireland. Notre Dame, Navy, we're going to be doing a watch party. We're going to be watching that. We're going to be putting down our comments in real time during the football game. Sam Hartman, first game under Marcus Freeman, the new offensive coordinator. Navy's got Newberry, their new head coach, the former defensive coordinator, who did a pretty good job as a defensive coordinator. Navy is tweaking their offense a little bit. If you'd watched the game last year, Navy, the fullback dive, they were gashing Notre Dame on that. Hopefully Notre Dame's defensive line plays a better game than they did last year, but we're going to be doing a watch party on it. We're going to be covering everything in college football. So if you love everything in college football, stick with us here during the 2023 football season. The games are about to come, and we are ready to rock and roll. So, from all of us at PATC to all of you, please, until next time, please, 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 you all take great care of each other. Thank you so very much.